of addiction class, and the patient or case study is a male named Pedro, who's 24, who is the first generation of Mexican, or the second generation of Mexican immigrants. His parents were people that were migrant farm workers, and he enlisted in the army, and as a result of an explosion and an accident, he had lost his hearing, and he was medically discharged, and he had undetermined PTSD. And when he came back to the States, he got a job, but he couldn't hold it because he'd have problems functioning because his GAF score when he first got back was 70, and later on it was assessed at 55. And he has deferred diagnosis and a 309.9 alcohol dependence is the first axis. You have to excuse me, I'm just not used to using them because we don't use these anymore. He had some problems with drinking at work, and he started hanging out more and more at the VA hall, and he got into an accident going home one day. That's when he has legal problems. Okay, now the plan for Pedro, I would say immediately he would need to be medically detoxed, because you can have seizures after 12 to 14 hours of not drinking, and within the next 48 hours, even more drinking, hallucinations, and shaking. Then there's the emotional roller coaster ride of addiction. When you have emotional problems and you've been self medicating like he has been, they're all going to come at you in a rush. It's going to be like you can't control the situation emotionally. You can actually feel like you're kind of you're going to think you're losing your mind. So, for that is inpatient rehab. Now, usually the state of New York has been giving 14 days, so I'm assuming that that's what he would get if he was in the state of New York. He would get group therapy that we do in inpatient, would include stages of change of addiction, relapse prevention, coping skills that involve cognitive behavioral therapy, um, learning about addiction, learning about the cycle of addiction, and the coping skills would help bring his thought patterns under control and maybe possibly help him understand himself and how to have some things to help him deal with it. Some of the other things that would be helpful would be physical activity, um, actually getting him on a very balanced diet. Some people that drink don't do nothing; they don't eat at all for days. Some of the physical activities can include yoga, which is what they do where I work, and it helps them learn how to quiet their mind. And we have small meditation in the morning, which would include meditation in a moment when someone is starting to bother you or things get too much for you, how to remove yourself mentally from the situation. And you need to, with a person from a Latino culture, you need to include the family in, because in Latino culture, the men are kind of the center of the family, and a lot of that revolves around um, the church sometimes. And they also have a big thing that men are supposed to be able to handle their liquor. If they cannot handle their liquor, then they're going to be seen as weak. Men are not supposed to be expressing emotion. The correct terminology is machoism. Macho. I'm probably saying it wrong, but I work considerably with Latino men, and they hold a counselor. When you're counseling Latinos, they hold a counselor at a higher like authority. They have a lot of respect. They do get offended when other people do not respect the counselor. So that's another thing. It's a personal relationship. You cannot sit there and be like, they understand if you show like you're fake caring. You have to show empathy. Um, you have to involve the family in counseling. Sometimes what they do at my place is they have something called the family program, where they introduce the family to the concept of disease, because with Latinos, they're going to think it's a moral failing, that it's their fault, they can just stop doing it. And they can't. Education is the goal, and explaining to um, his family that you're going to have problems in the future, that he's going to need more than just addiction counseling, he's going to need psychological counseling or personal counseling to help him deal with um, what he's seen. He's also going to need to speak to other veterans. There's lots of veterans in recovery. He needs to, the FEW is good for supports for veterans, but they drink there. So he needs to find AA, and he needs to, I would suggest contacting a veterans hospital. Sometimes they meet there. They'll meet at libraries. They probably don't put it on the AA website, because this would be something that would be just for veterans only. He needs to be around veterans that are in recovery, veterans that have dealt with PTSD, and he could find a support group. He needs to be hooked up with a therapist that understands what he's going through, and has been through combat. Doesn't necessarily have to be Latino, but he needs that extra support, or he's just gonna start using again. And the next time maybe he gets in a car accident, he might not make it out alive. So I don't know if this is what really wanted, but I would also think too that um, after he's been clean and sober for 6 months, another psychological evaluation to rule out any pre-existing mental health issues besides PTSD. Because sometimes people have anger problems, they have things that happened a long time ago, and it comes out later after your brain starts to become clear. So that is my video presentation for Addiction Mod 3 Assignment 3. Thank you.